Join me as we try to solve 3 Sherlock Holmes short stories. I'm aiming for a fun, game-like feel where I walk us through the stories step by step. We've got a variety of different types of Holmes stories. I'll briefly set the scene by summarizing the setup of the story. So that's like setting the stage with characters and the circumstances and what the actual crime is. And then I'll present clues as they appear to you all. But be warned, I will be sharing my own deductions and reactions and thoughts. So there absolutely will be spoilers. And by the time we end this, we will all know who done it. My hope is that maybe you'll be able to solve the mystery before Sherlock Holmes and even probably before I do. I am then going to ask you to put a different emoji in the comment section at the end of each of the 3 stories to let me know if you were able to solve the mystery. To add to the game feel, I decided to get the Sherlock Holmes LEGO kit to put together while listening to the audio versions, but I do have the physical copy to look over to make sure that we don't miss any clues. And be sure to stay till the end to see what I do to celebrate finishing solving these 3 cases. But before then, get out your pencil and notepad and let's get sleuthing. First, we'll face one of Holmes' most famous locked room cases. A young woman hears a strange whistle in the night. Her sister is dead, and only Sherlock Holmes can uncover the killer and the method. Can we solve it before he does? So in this story, we have Sherlock Holmes and Watson being awoken early in the morning by a woman who is in need of Sherlock Holmes' services. She really kind of sets the stage with this idea that she is a woman who is afraid. She doesn't have the money to pay him right now, but once she gets married, she'll get that money. So she proceeds to tell Sherlock Holmes a story about her life. Her mother met her stepfather in India. Her stepfather was trained to be a doctor in India, but ended up becoming strangely volatile and beating someone, and he narrowly avoided a capital punishment and ended up in jail for a little bit. So the doctor, the stepfather, and the mother returned back to England with her 2 daughters. So he has 2 stepdaughters who are twins. The mother has since died, and the doctor right now gets the income for the 2 girls that was the mother's income, but now the daughters will get that upon their marriages. 2 years ago, one of the twins, Julia, was supposed to get married, and on the night before her wedding, she told her sister Helen that she was hearing a whistle at night. And the night before her wedding, there was a loud couple of noises, and when Helen rushed into her sister's room, she died shortly thereafter. And so there's this big mystery around it. The coroner really couldn't determine what the cause of death was. Helen kind of moved on, but now Helen is engaged to be married, and now that she's engaged to be married, she is starting to hear the whistle.
Sherlock and Watson did some research, and it turns out that when the girls marry, the stepfather, doctor, stops getting any of the income that the mother has left through her inheritance and because of her death. And so the stepfather, doctor, definitely has motive. And he came and visited Sherlock Holmes after Helen left and was very violent and rude and bent a fire poker in half that was like metal. So we kind of get the feeling that he has a history of violence and he has a motive at this point. So that's kind of where we're being led. I don't know if it's a red herring, but that's where we're being led. Next, we go with Sherlock and Watson to the manor where Helen lives. They do some exploring outside, and then they go inside to see these bedrooms along this corridor. It's very apparent that there's been some construction. There is a central living area that I imagine like right in the middle, and then there's a wing of bedrooms. And in the interim, like recently, Helen didn't divulge this when she first came to Sherlock Holmes, but we have that bedroom that the stepfather doctor is in, and then her twin was in when her twin died. And then her bedroom, she's now been asked to move into her twin's bedroom where she had died, right next to the stepfather doctor. And so Helen herself said, like, it seems like that's just, another step that's showing me that I'm in danger is now I'm in that bedroom. So we go with Sherlock and Watson to explore the bedroom. We don't hear a lot of pertinent information, except there is a bell pull that goes all the way down and touches the pillow. And when Sherlock pulls it, there's no bell. And so he says it's a dummy. It's not actually hooked to anything. And it goes up near a ventilator, which is like a vent. And Sherlock Holmes says himself that he had kind of guessed that there was a ventilator because the sister had said she could smell the cigar smoke from the room next door. And the only way it wouldn't come through the walls necessarily that pungently, that there probably was a ventilator. And he said it's weird that you would have a ventilator to go from room to room and not ventilate into the outside. Like, why do you need a ventilator inside in between rooms when really you're trying to ventilate to get fresh air? So it should really go to the outside. He does tell us that getting in through the window is pretty much impossible. You can't even slide a knife in the slats in the window of the metal protectors. So if the sister had that all shut and locked, then no one would be able to get in that way. So then they go and explore the stepfather doctor's bedroom because he's not come home yet. Sherlock Holmes finds a safe and he asks the stepdaughter about it, and she says, oh, it has his papers in it. And he said, okay, so you've seen in it? And she said, years ago, it just had papers in it. He said, well, it's weird. Does he have a cat in it? And she's like, what are you talking about? There shouldn't be any cats except the baboon and the cheetah, which he does have sort of running amok, which is bizarre in and of itself. But there's a saucer of what Sherlock Holmes says is milk on top of the safe. So then they leave, they go outside to the lawn, and at this point, he makes a plan with the stepdaughter, that he and Watson are going to stay in her room unbeknownst to the stepfather doctor. So they have this plan of like showing lights, and then she's going to open the window and he's going to go in. So at this point, Sherlock seems to know what's happening. So at this point, I think the stepfather doctor could be a red herring, but I am thinking that at this point, he's got a motive. He's obviously violent. He's the one that did it, and that we're really at this point just trying to figure out how he did it. And remembering that the sister said something about a speckled band and the saucer of milk, the rope pull and the ventilator and the whistle that she was hearing. My thought is, especially, and then this behavior of having animals from India, my thought is that somehow there is an animal, some sort of creature, that is responding to whistles as commands and is able to go from the doctor's bedroom down into the ventilator, down the rope. And then I guess hearing another whistle command goes back. So the thing is Watson says that the slots are not big enough, or no, only a rat could get through there. So I don't know what kind of animal. This is where I am with my suppositions, and I have no idea how this is going to play out.
I am enlisting the help of my family because I don't know how great I am at this. So I've brought them in on the whole thing. So my son is guessing that a snake is involved, which would make sense because it would fit through the ventilator. It's just controlled by whistle commands. Something that he did mention, though, is that when she heard her sister scream, the door that was supposed to be locked was unlocked and was swinging on its hinges. So it means something may have come out of the room. So we're not sure if it's a creature or if the doctor is a red herring or if Helen herself is the one. But so far, the theory that I like the best is the snake. All right, so if you don't want to know any spoilers, then you want to skip ahead. But it turns out that my son was right. The culprit was an adder that came from India. So the fact that this stepfather doctor was collecting animals from where he had met the stepdaughter's mother implied that he also could have gotten a snake from India. And he was using the ventilator and the rope for the snake to move, and the snake was responding to whistle commands. So good on my son. I've told him that for the rest of these types of stories, I'm going to continue to tell him about them to see if he can help me figure them out. because I don't know if I would have come up with a snake on my own. I was pretty sure that the stepfather doctor was the perpetrator, the murderer, but other than a creature, I wasn't 100% sure how he had done it. But my son was right. It was a snake. If you were able to solve the adventure of the speckled band before the actual reveal, then put a bed emoji in the comment.
The Adventure of the Red-Headed League.
The Adventure of the Red-Headed League was supposedly Conan Doyle's personal favorite Holmes story. A league hires red-headed men to copy the encyclopedia for hours every day. But then, the mysterious Red-Headed League suddenly vanishes. Can we figure out what in the world is going on before Sherlock? So in this story, we have Jabez Wilson. He shows up at Sherlock Holmes's office, where Dr. Watson also is, and he has this story to tell. He's a pawnbroker. He owns his own shop, and he recently hired a girl to kind of like work in his house because he's a widow, and he also hired an assistant. He used to have 2 assistants, but business slowed down a little bit, and so now he just needed 1, so he put an advertisement out, and he got a young man into who is going to be his assistant. And after the young man had worked for a little bit, he brought an advertisement to Jabez that advertised a job for redheads. And the assistant seemed to know the background on it. He said, you know, there's an American redhead who was very wealthy, and so at his death, he established this organization that only offered jobs to redheads. He's like, you know, maybe you want to go, maybe you don't want to go. And of course, Jabez said, yeah, I definitely want to go. Come on, we'll close the shop and let's go. So he and his assistant go over to this specific location that's in the ad. And he said, there's just people lined up on the street that all have red hair. Somehow, his assistant got him up to the front of the line. I think there's like varying shades of red. But this gentleman, when he goes in, Jabez, he notes that the gentleman across the desk in this office that he's being brought into has the same deep shade red hair that he does. And the gentleman says, as long as you can arrive here with ink and you stay here between 10 and 2 every day and copy out the Encyclopedia Britannica each day, starting at A for those 4 hours, then you're hired. And so he gets the job. He leaves his pawnbroker business to being run by the assistant, and he goes there for weeks to fill this out. He gets to the letter B in the encyclopedia and arrives at work at this office, and there's a sign up that says the Red-Headed League is dissolved as of October 8th, 1890. And so he has taken this sign to Sherlock Holmes, and he's like, you know, I had this job. I was supposed to get this income. And Sherlock Holmes says, well, okay, you made really good money on the time that you worked there. There's really no sort of recourse for you. You know, it's gone. But there's something in this story that kind of pings Sherlock Holmes that there's more of a case here and a crime that is being committed than, you know, this gentleman not keeping this weird copy of the encyclopedia job. So a couple things to note. The assistant, Sherlock Holmes got very excited when he heard that the assistant had a spot of acid on his forehead, and which I'm not sure what that means. And he also said, does he have a place for earrings? And the Mr. Jabez, the owner, said, yeah, he has a place for earrings. Supposedly, it happened to him when he was younger. There's something about the information around this assistant that has excited Sherlock Holmes. In the meantime, he has sent off Mr. Jabez. It is a Saturday, which is important to note because they keep mentioning it. He decides to stop by this pawnbroker shop. So he goes, and the assistant answers the door. And Sherlock Holmes asks him some innocuous question about the location of something, and he immediately gives it and then closes the door. And Sherlock Holmes is leaving with Watson. He's like, what do you think? And Watson's like, I don't know. Guy's pretty smart. It seems like he knows it. And Sherlock Holmes says he's probably the 4th smartest person in London, maybe the 3rd smartest person. And he said, I didn't go to meet him. I went to look at the knees of his trousers. We're once again at a nocturnal event where Sherlock Holmes has asked Watson to bring his revolver, and they are going to go at night to explore this crime that Sherlock Holmes seems to know is happening. So at this point, I obviously think there's something going on with the assistant. I don't know if there's like smuggling going on. I don't know if there's embezzlement at the pawnbroker shop, but it seems like it wouldn't be that. I think it's something to do with somebody who looks like someone else. I don't know. I'm not sure. I will say the other thing to add is when Mr. Chavez was talking about his assistant, he said he's always, he instead of like improving his mind, he's out taking photographs and then going down to the cellar to develop them. So he's a photographer who's developing his own photos. So I don't know if there is blackmail that is going on. And again, I'm not sure if I fully understand the significance of the redheaded part of this. So hopefully you maybe know what's going on, but otherwise I'm going to continue working on the Lego project and listening to the Adventures of the Red-Headed League. All right, so we finished the Adventures of the Red-Headed League. So this one is a different kind of mystery in that Sherlock Holmes had information that we didn't get. So before I go too far into depth of this, if you don't want to know the solution, make sure that you skip ahead to the next section of the video. But if you are trying to figure it out and you are curious, after I talked about he went to knock on the door to look at the trousers to see how the knees were, he then scoped out the other side of the street. And he mentioned these different stores, and right in between, like right in the middle of his list of the stores, was a bank. And so at that point in our family, we talked about, well, obviously the significance is that they were just trying to get the pawnbroker out of the house. The fact he had been targeted by this assistant, the assistant was happy not getting paid as much, and they were just trying to get him out of the house from 10 to 2 each day so that they could dig a tunnel, basically, between the pawnbroker shop and the bank. The redheaded part to me wasn't that much of a connection. That was just the color of the hair of the partner in the robbery. And so it just sort of lended itself to like having them both have red hair. Again, it was a very complex and ornate way to get the pawnbroker out of the house. But apparently what Sherlock Holmes knew that we didn't know was that this was a thief that he has been trying to catch for a while. He got Scotland Yard involved. He got the bank president involved. And so they all sort of knew that they were a target and that this was a very well-known thief that they were having trouble catching. And when Holmes saw the knees on the man's trousers, it corroborated it. He had been crawling around, obviously working on his knees to like dig and be dirty. Okay, so put a redheaded man emoji in the comments if you figured out the Adventures of the Red-Headed League before Sherlock did his reveal.
A case of identity.
A woman's fiance vanishes on their wedding day, and she reaches out to Sherlock Holmes to ask for help in finding the missing person. So something that I've noticed in all of these stories is that Sherlock Holmes has to sort of establish himself as a fantastic private investigator. So anybody who shows up, he has to pinpoint these little things that he's noticed about them to sort of let them know that he's as good as they've heard and that they're justified in coming to him. So the beginning is always this like rehashing of his brilliance and then him showing off his brilliance to whatever client has showed up at his door. So it's literally, the first couple pages is that. So then we actually get into the case where we have a Mary Sutherland who arrives at his door. Watson is, of course, with him. We're hearing the perspective from Watson as he's telling the story. And Mary has this tale about a Hosmer angel, and he's gone missing. So the story is Mary is a typist. She gets paid for doing certain number of sheets of typing, but she actually does get a $100 a year allowance from her deceased father's estate. So it's basically like interest that she gets from overseas coming in. And her mother remarried a younger man. So her new stepfather is only 5 years older than her. And Mary's like this really easygoing people pleaser. And so she tells Sherlock Holmes that even though she's got a pretty good investment that comes to her of $100 a year, she just turns that over to her stepfather and mother, and she just uses the money that she gets from the typing. And so Sherlock Holmes already is like, okay, that's weird that she's turning over her money very generously to her parents. But she's like, well, I live with them, and with my stepfather being young, it is kind of weird for him to be in this place of authority, but that's who my mother chose. So she says she's gotten to the age now where she's ready to start looking for a marriage partner. And the stepfather is not into it. He doesn't want them going anywhere. He doesn't want them leaving the house. He certainly doesn't want them going to a ball. And she has put her foot down and said, no, I'm going to go to a ball. I want to meet other people. And so he's like, okay, whatever. I have to travel for work to France. If you're going to do what you're going to do, whatever. So he leaves, and the daughter and her mother go to this ball, and she meets this man, Hosmer Angel, who is just so kind to her, and she falls in love. And he proposes very quickly. And so she tells Sherlock Holmes they were engaged really quickly. And she's describing her interaction with Hosmer. She's not 100% sure where he lives. She has a street address, like a street that he lives on, but she's not sure what the actual address is. And it seems like maybe he lives at his place of employment. Anytime she takes walks with him, it has to be in the dusk or at the end of the day. He wears rose-tinted glasses. His voice is kind of obviously has a strain because he talks in this weird whispery voice. She described him as, I think, having whiskers and bald, and went through the whole thing. And so at this point, Sherlock seems pretty confident that he knows what's going on. So he thanks her and says, I'll get back to you. He then spends some time with Watson on describing this woman's appearance. And it always makes me nervous when he does that in any of these cases that we've read, is when he turns kind of to the person coming to him, because you always think is this an unreliable narrator story, in that what Sherlock Holmes is hearing is unreliable. So there are a couple odd situations here. So the engagement happened so fast that the mother was like, hey, let's just go ahead and get married before your father comes back, stepfather comes back, because he's going to be angry. So I found that odd. The other thing, obviously, that's odd is that any correspondence that's coming from him is typed. It's all typewritten. And so you sort of immediately are like, okay, this person has something to hide. And I also think it's weird that the mom is in cahoots, where she's like, yeah, you need to get married before the father comes back. So Mary Sutherland agrees to meet Hosmer Angel at the church. She has it all set up. He takes a carriage over to the church to meet her, and she's waiting for him to get out of it, and he never does. And the cab driver opens it up and looks in, and no one's in there, and he's befuddled. So she gets left at the altar. And she did tell Sherlock Holmes that many times Hosmer had said to her, no matter what happens, I will come back for you. So, save yourself for me, because I will come back. And so she's really just heartbroken that this person that she had a connection with is now missing. So a couple things, talking it over with my son, I said, well, maybe it's, somehow is a woman, she's, was in a relationship with this man who was 15 years younger. And now he's married, but they're realizing that the money is actually going to be coming from the daughter. And so it's let's do a pretend engagement. So we have talked it out some more, and we are wondering if it's similar to the first case we listened to of the Speckled Band, where you have a stepfather who wants the income from the daughter, realizes that the mother isn't going to be able to provide it. And so he has concocted this whole big disguise to trick the daughter into staying in the family. So if he has her falling in love with him and then the man is missing, then she's kind of stuck waiting for Hosmer to come back, and he's able to continue with the mother to draw. The only part of this solution is that the mother is involved with tricking her daughter, which is really awful. Really awful. But that's kind of where we've landed, is that there's just a connection with the Speckled band, and that it's a similar daughter, basically getting screwed out of her income and being tricked, and what a really terrible trick that is. So we finished, and if you don't want it to be spoiled, this is when you would want to skip ahead. It certainly was the case that the stepfather played a very mean trick on his stepdaughter, as did the mother. She was in on it as well, because the stepfather said we didn't think she would take it seriously, which of course Sherlock Holmes did not let him get away with. It just was a very cruel trick, and it basically was that the stepfather, when he was supposed to be in France, dressed up as Hosmer Angel and wooed the stepdaughter and proposed to her, left her at the altar, and made sure to say multiple times, make sure you wait for me, I will come back. So she would never look at another man, because her heart was with Hosmer, and he would come back. And then that way the mother and the stepfather would continue to get the £100. Really awful, tragic kind of story. And the thing that I think is also most frustrating is that at the end of this case, Watson asks him, what is he going to tell Miss Sutherland? Sherlock Holmes says, "If I tell her, she will not believe me. You may remember the old Persian saying, 'There is danger for him who taketh the tiger cub, and danger also for whoso snatches a delusion from a woman.'" So it sounds like Sherlock Holmes realizes that even if he tells her, she may not believe him, she may blame him, no good will come from this ruining this delusion for her. So I don't know how he circles back with the woman to let her know. I don't know if he lies and tells her he found out that he's died. I don't know. But she needs to get away from her stepfather and mother. So I don't know how it resolves in that regard. So if you were able to figure out a case of identity, then put a bride emoji in the comments below. At this point, I think I might read some more, but I do know that I want to watch The Private Life of Sherlock Holmes. You guys, I had so much fun doing this. I loved trying to figure it out. I loved that it was a little bit less pressure than maybe like a full book, that it was just a short story. I was able to kind of think about the clues and not have to keep track of so much as you might in a full-length novel. So I loved doing this. If this is something that you enjoy and you'd like me to do more of this, then let me know in the comments below. Thanks so much for watching, and until next time.